Good evening, everyone. At this time, it's 6:30 p.m., and we're going to call this budget workshop to order. So we will stand and do our Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Stone, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor James.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Jameson.
Here.
Commissioner Ambrose.
Here.
Okay, thank you. All right, and with that, we will go into item number 1. Business item, presentation of proposed FY 21-22 budget for the following departments, starting with general fund revenue.
Madam Mayor and Commission, I'd like to give a brief year review to the Commission while Mr. Stefanos gets ready to present the budget. So despite the budgetary woes of the pandemic-riddled year, city staff has worked hard to be good stewards of the residents' hard-earned money, while still accomplishing major improvements throughout the city. Some of the projects that we'll highlight here, it's not an all-inclusive list, is the A2 sewer project, which was finished up in Southside. All-inclusive playground at Sports Complex this year. Some new water lines in this northwest side. New playground equipment at Walter Howard Park. New design and bids for a third well that'll be coming to the commission Thursday night for approval. PD's purchased some new firearms. New UTV or off-road vehicle they got through a grant. Firefighters received some new rescue gear or additional rescue gear for the 4 sinkhole rescues we've had this year. There's been additional, we started working on water and sewer master plan this year. We've started some changes to the land development code. We've looked at upgrades in replacement of the phone system this year. We looked at firewall upgrades within the city. We've seen some hacking throughout the country, and we've been able to keep up with all those. All this was made possible through staff's countless hours of working within the budget constraints we've had, going out looking for grants, contacting different vendors, meeting with different vendors, trying to procure the materials we needed to get the stuff we need at a reasonable price. Looking into the future, we still have a mountain of projects to tackle as our city continues to grow. So does the strain on our infrastructure as we are growing. So our strategic plan meeting highlighted many of the items to move forward throughout the next decade. The budget in front of you is a combination of knowledge, skills, and determination of you, of us, our commissioners, and your department heads. So pinpointing the necessary expenditures to ensure we give our staff the tools they need to succeed and continue to rebuild our infrastructure from water lines, sewer lines, roads, and other improvements throughout, and additional capabilities of departments we have. So thank you. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stefanos.
Department heads were actively part of this process.
Yes, sir. That was all this was done at the department head level.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commission. We are going to go ahead and start getting into several of the departments that are on the agenda tonight. Just to start out, as you probably already noticed with your budget, that it was formatted a little differently than in previous years. We took out the restricted funds, more restricted funds and committed funds out of the general fund, so that you have a reflection of your true unrestricted fund balance this year. In addition, as Commissioner Jameson mentioned, the department heads were all involved, had several meetings with them. They prepared their own budgets and talked through where they were at with their projects for this year, finishing up this fiscal year, and how they wanted the next fiscal year to go, what projects, and worked really hard to fund as much as we can. Then I actually might need to do this. To start out, the summary of funds, again, this is not just operational, this also includes capital projects in the anticipation that we will be getting some financing for projects, as well as we did put in the budget the debt payments so that that would all work, and had been working with PFM on what those anticipated debt payments would be on the items that we've already discussed that y'all seem to be in favor of. So, let me go back. Thanks. The general fund, the revenues over the expenditures came in at 5269417 revenues and 5,254,324 for the expenditures. The special revenue funds, the expenditures were greater than the revenues, mainly because this is mostly capital projects. The Wild Spaces Fund has a very large fund balance, and so it was using some of that fund balance to do Parks and Rec activities. That's what really most of that is the Wild Spaces money to do activities. The Enterprise Fund, those are your water, sewer, solid waste. That came in 14,072,000. Over 14,032,000. And that includes the wastewater treatment plant expansion. So we're anticipating getting in a lot of revenues if we move forward on that. Again, those cancel each other out. And the payment for that, which we anticipate getting a grant for that. The third well and AMI and the building improvements are a storage to take care of our assets, our equipment that's currently exposed, that we want to make sure it keeps in good condition longer. So we are wanting to get a new public works storage building that we anticipate having to finance, over like a 2-year period, not very long. So I'll go ahead and start with the departments. I won't go over each line item as far as personnel versus operations. I'll just give you the total and then the changes and the strategic planning item that it relates to. On some of them, such as the some departments, their strategic planning items did not cost anything. Like human resources, a lot of that is kind of just work staff does, not something that needs to be funded. So the only strategic planning items I brought out were the ones that need to be funded that were included in this budget. So the city commission budget is $126,988. There are no major changes at all to this budget, and there's no required budgeted funds for the strategic planning items. Yeah. The city manager budget is $326,139. The changes were increase in personnel due to moving the assistant city manager position over. Some of that is still in fire as well, since the assistant city manager still is over fire. But we did move some of that salary to the general fund. We moved the PIO out of IT and split that between the city manager's office and fire as well. As far as strategic planning items, the strategic planning items that we have in the city manager's office do not require budgeted funds. City clerk, the total budget for the city clerk's office is $232,355. The main changes was an increase in contractual services to pay for MuniCode legal review. And what that is would be a review. The departments will work on it with MuniCode to review our ordinances and get them all in line and recodified and in a clean version on MuniCode. You go back through and you check dates, you check who does what, you check a lot of things, and it just cleans it up, and it's a lot easier to use for staff and the public, and it really needs to be done. As well as an increase in city election expense due to holding the city election ourselves. This is the year.
Workers' comp. it says the work is at a high rate. Do we know why it's at a high rate? And the only reason I'm asking is because this is what I do for the school board. So when I saw the high rate and moderate and so forth, I know what this means. So I'm just wondering, did we have additional accidents, more accidents than normal?
Mr. Gillingham was moved into partial of his, is in the city manager's budget, so the increase.
Say what?
Mr. Gillingham's workers' comp rate is higher than, say, just Mrs. Zapatos and Berlin that was normally in the budget, so the increase in.
So you'll see a difference. So by adding a different person, the rate went up?
That's correct, because it's done by your class code. So he's still public safety.
Okay, I understand that, and that's fine. I'm just saying, because usually what we do on the deal is severity and frequency is what drives your workers' comp load, is severity and frequency. So we haven't seen an uptick. It's solely by bringing somebody else into that, the additional person? Yes, sir. Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure it wasn't an accident type of deal. I'm good, thank you.
And if you'd like, I can stop after each department budget, or I can just go all the way through. Okay. So back to city clerk. The other was, it's the year to hold our election ourselves. So that was an increase. Again, the remaining strategic planning items do not require budgeted funds. Human resources, no major changes. Strategic planning items that we are working on next year do not require budgeted funds. Finance, the total for finance is $290,784, and this was pretty much the same as last year too, making adjustments for, what expenditures are actually occurring, but there was no major changes and none required budgeted funds.
Well, I understand she's going in a different order than the tab, so I'm just.
Yeah, that's
looking
true.
back and forth.
I went the order of the agenda, is what I did for
Yeah,
this.
the
but-
tabs are different, so we're
Okay.
having to skip
Yeah.
to actually look at the
attention
detail.
span for young is not the same as us, so you're gonna have to slow down a little bit so he can pay attention.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll like pause after each.
Where's the
department.
finance?
Do we anticipate being able to fill the finance director position either at this fiscal year or at the beginning of this for these numbers?
We went ahead to advertise it, so these numbers are, someone starting October 1. And there are some funds left. It looks like we have a good balance left between our revenues versus expenditures for this past fiscal year, so I would feel comfortable going ahead and hiring the position where we did find someone qualified right now.
Okay.
And it's the same salary scale as the previous finance director. Pay range.
What's UB?
Utility billing, licensing and billing.
I'm just curious as why was half put in to finance? I'm just curious.
Okay, so both of those come out of the general fund, but we were looking at the position. It helps oversee utility billing as well somewhat, so that's why it was put in both.
So the revenues for this that we receive from the state for running the tag agency, where do those appear as revenues?
The revenues are, if you move to the front, on the detail for general fund revenues, it would be under page 4. It's item 6 down, so the end of the year actual for 2019-2020 was 80,000. The end of the year estimate is 78,000. We budgeted 75,000 in revenues to be conservative.
Is that charges for services? Ours aren't numbered. So is that charges for services?
That's just what we receive for our services we provide, yes,
Okay, those numbers you just said didn't match what I'm looking at. What am I
You
missing?
on page 4?
Details. No, I'm not. That's why. There we go. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just trying to follow along on this new format.
We made your book look different from everyone else's.
So you're anticipating a little bit less in revenue, though?
Well, it's really, I'm not, but I'm trying to be conservative.
Oh, I like that.
It would make my
Okay.
life easier if you want me to
We're good.
move it up.
We're good.
Okay. So, do you have any other questions on finance right now? I mean, y'all can ask questions now or at the end, however you want. Okay, so licensing and billing, the total amount for their department is $230,286. We moved the meter reader position under water because that's quite honestly where we believe it belongs, because sometimes the men get involved helping to read the meters and it's supervised from that department, and it just makes more sense for that position to be in that department, as well as it takes a position off the general fund, having to spend the money from the general fund. IT, the total budget for this is $203,129. We increased professional services. The total budget for information technology is $203,129. We increased the professional services account for increase in usage. A lot of that's because we're starting to use Kevin on more PIO stuff. Kevin's helping significantly with IT still, and this was probably me being overly conservative again. I could probably decrease that some.
Contractually with,
Yes, with
we'll see
Emerald
that
Data.
go down a little bit
Mhm.
because this went up. Because I know that's when we came in, that was one of the things that he would be taking over some of the duties that Emerald
Yes,
did and would reduce the cost. So you doing that?
yes, he has done that. But
Okay.
since I've come on, I keep using him for more PIO stuff, so it's kind of like an in-between thing now. Because he's good at it.
I know.
So increase in computers and printers to keep replacement hardware on schedule. So basically, a lot of this, the money for the replacement, it's kind of like what happened with the vehicles. It was taken out of the budget, and so we need to keep on a IT technology replacement schedule so that we don't end up having to purchase a ton of computers one year. We increased in email expense for cloud software expenses, new user, and increased productivity licenses. We do have some employees using more parts of software. For instance, planning is using CAD more with the increase that we are doing with all the new developments coming in and the increase in cases. And so there's more activity, and that's impacting across departments, and it's impacting software. So there was a slight increase in the cloud software expenses, as well as there were just some things that were under budgeted, some of these things were bringing up to previous years budgeting numbers, and because the amounts that things cost didn't decrease, they stayed the same or went up. And then we moved wireless communication services and new computers out of IT into departmental budgets. And one of the reasons for this was so that departments are responsible more with their IT usage and more involved. So there wasn't just kind of it was less of this kind of big fund anyone could grab out of. It was a way to manage and track it and have people take ownership of their IT usage more.
IT, 24,300 communication services, right? And wireless, excuse me, 38,468. So we put 4,000 in there now. So what is the total cost for wireless as it's spread out amongst the district?
I have a spreadsheet on that. I would have to go back to the spreadsheet.
Well, we spent, I'm just curious, because we spent 38,468 last year.
The cost really didn't change.
Yeah.
What we did is it was distributed out for the departments where they belong, so the cost is pretty much unchanged. We just put it back in the department. Because what was happening is Public Works, let's just say, wanted an air card for a Verizon air card. Well, it was just get thrown into IT, and that budget, nobody had accountability for it. So we wanted to make the departments accountable for it.
Just like computers, I may decide that I need a new computer at the fire department. If Eric didn't have it on the replacement schedule with Emerald Data, it was an unbudgeted cost. So that's with new employees, we're making them put in the cost for a new computer with that employee if they're required to have one.
This up when we do this. I'm just asking, you could divide this up and all of a sudden you're at $45,000 or $48,000, and we may not know that there was an increase because it's been incrementally divided. I'm just asking overall, the wireless is maintained and we just spread it out amongst the specific departments.
Yes, it's still the same.
It was divided up based off of users in each department. So if I added another user in the fire department, I have to figure out how I'm going to pay for it.
Yeah, we didn't all of a sudden add like 10 more users on anything and that. In fact, we hope it helps kind of reel things in. Public information, this is a new program area because we have a public information officer. So we want to give him the tools he needs to do his job. The majority of this is in a very, very small amount in professional services, and most of it's marketing and promoting the city.
Are these figures new, or were these within other budgets that
These
are
are
now?
new.
Okay.
So when we look at like his wireless for $485, does that include anything towards internet, or is that just a cell phone, or what?
Oh, well, that was already in there, just the marketing stuff is new.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
Yeah.
so his cell phone and like wireless air card, so we had to add because that was moved into this.
Yeah.
That was his cost.
Planning, the total amount for planning is 158,718. We moved the entire salary of the planning tech out of building to planning. A lot of that is for purposes that you're not supposed to be taking planning out of building. It would made sense before because she was doing a lot of building work, but with the amount of planning that we need done now with the increased development and the code changes and all those other things, Christy really needs to be pure planning so we can get done all the things you want us to get done. So that's why we moved her out of building, so she's doing less building work and she's doing all planning. And we added retainer line items, and that when I say retainer, those are the amounts of money that the developers pay, they put up front for professional services when they come in related to their projects. And it's more like a pass through because on the expenditure side, there's the retainer line item as well that that cancel each other out. So it's basically that's not revenue the city's paying, it's revenue the developer's paying, but we needed a line item to keep the accounting for it. And it's so the developer's paying their costs and the city's not paying any costs related to their projects. And then the strategic planning item that we did put a little bit in professional services. We are going to decrease some of it to pay for some other things, and we're going to do the land development code in-house, but we want to keep around $10,000 in there for the planning council who helps us currently with advertising and some other things, and so we still want to keep some money in there for the planning council. Building special revenue fund, so their beginning balance after this year, what we anticipate is $430,413. There.
Farmer's market. Look low.
It is on page 58. So the beginning balance for that special revenue fund is 430,000. Revenues 376 minus personnel and operating and capital makes your total budget 359, 388. The expenditures with the general fund transfer is 392, 718, with the ending balance being 413, 695. We need to keep this balance under a certain amount so we don't have to roll back fees, which are very necessary in a growing city. We need to keep those fees where they are. So the changes are that we, again, as discussed before, took the planning tech out and moved planning entirely to the general fund. And we are recommending a permit tech position, but that we put that in there, but we're only recommending that that be filled if some of these developments go through, as far as getting entitled and platted. That way they have someone who can come in and help get some of the records ready and some of the other things ready for the development that's going to come in. They need some additional assistance to be prepared. If the commission doesn't approve these developments that want to come through, then we would not fill the position. That's kind of what our recommendation is on that. And we added a line item for a train depot payment. We're getting that appraised right now per the CRA board to see how much that will cost. And if so, then since the building department occupies the majority of the train depot anyway, it makes more sense for them to own it than the CRA. So the train depot payment that we put in there was 25,000 should the CRA board and the commission decide to move forward in the coming year with the building department purchasing the train depot, making payments to CRA. And in the strategic planning items, that there was additional positions to handle growth was in there, and purchase of the train depot from CRA was in the strategic planning items. Oh, it does. I'm not good with technology. See, I don't. What do I do? Where do I print it? Don't give me technology. I can do numbers. Okay. So parks. This is the Parks General Fund. There's also the Special Revenue Fund. So the amount of the personnel is 239,000, operating 138. And some odd change. The totals for the parks from general fund is $377,617. So last year with COVID, there was, if you look on the budget, there was a big decrease in the adopted amount from previous years because there was the anticipation that there would be less things going on because of COVID. In some instances, that was true, but in other instances, it was exactly the opposite as more people were using parks. So we basically put back programs and supplies to what they were in previous years. This is being more conservative, so you have the money there should you need it. And it really represents similar figures prior to COVID. So we put that back in there. We've had an increase in utilities, electrical cost, pretty significant increase, in additional repairs and maintenances at the parks. So that's what increases were in there. I pulled out more than increases for y'all instead of the decreases. We made decreases all over the budget too. I'm just bringing the things to your attention that are probably care more about the increases, I would think. And then there are no required budgeted funds for the strategic planning items. again, a lot of the strategic planning items were just staff work and that they didn't all require budgeted amounts. We pull it.
15 to 35, and I'm just curious, some of it
Yeah,
is tree removal.
Yes, if you see that, we took off for the trees, I believe. That included tree removal. And also we went ahead for if you look at the operating supplies of park maintenance, it's no longer a line item. We just took the amount from the adopted budget from a little bit in between the adopted budget from 2021 and the actual of 2020, I'm sorry, fiscal year 2019. We just combined that. Correct.
Doesn't make it look as bad. It doesn't make it look as bad when you're rolling 10 grand over into it and add it on. That's different than just a $20,000.
Absolutely, completely understandable. And also as well as you can see, because what Mr. Thotto said was that, you know, we 22% was cut from our budget, from the Parks and Rec budget from last year with COVID. So if you kind of look at the actuals from 2019, 2020, 2021. Yes, sir.
Okay, so Parks and Rec special revenue. So previously, the Parks and Rec special revenue was rolled in with the general fund. This is money for wild spaces. We took it out of the general fund because it's restricted revenues. So it kind of should be taken out of the general fund. So, and it helps us know what we have to work with through the year, and it's more transparent. So the beginning balance is $1,052,215. The total amount is because with additional revenues, we anticipate 584,000 coming with additional wild space money this next year and the land conservation grant, so that it would increase that above the beginning balance, and then our total amount that we have to spend is $1,138,752 is what we are putting in the budget. We do not anticipate getting through all that money by any means, but we wanted to put it in there so it's there. Should we decide to move forward with a large project like Rails to Trails or something like that, where we're needed to make a decent contribution, if that was to get momentum. So, but again, anything over a certain amount comes to y'all. So the ending balance would be 497, 463. The big change to this was the parks project manager needed to help with, the canoe outpost, should y'all decide to approve it on Thursday. And several of these projects, that's a lot of projects to help manage that.
2875 is for that position. Okay.
And the strategic planning items that y'all pulled out during a strategic planning session were, Memorial Park, the Canoe Outpost, Catherine Taylor Community Center, Rails to Trails. We also did put money for our park and trail system master plan that we would bring to y'all to let y'all decide if you wanted to fund that or not. With the developments coming in, it would be very helpful to have something like that to point to tell the developers that this is the vision for our city. This is where, you need to put trails when they come in. So we have things that link to each other and connectivity, and that don't get overwhelmed with any population. Say it's even 5 or 10 or 15 years down the road, you're planning so you're not behind the 8 ball. So that's what's in Parks and Rec special revenue. Farmers market. So there was a large increase in the farmers market budget. The total budget for this year is $81,191, and that's really mainly because it's gotten a lot of activity. A lot of people have been going to the farmers market this year, but those are pass-through funds. So they're being generated anything that's expended is being generated on the revenue side. It's for like the tokens and all the things that go along with it. And so the numbers are just coming in high on the revenue and expenditure side this year. So we accounted for that in the budget. So that's the farmer's market. And we can, if you want, we can go through each budget now that was on the agenda, and like y'all can ask questions, and I can have the department heads, if you'd like, I can have the department heads come up here and stand ready to answer questions, and we can go back through each department, and then the department heads can come to the podium. Does that sound okay? Okay, so what was the first one on the agenda? Okay, can we go? I think I had it in order of the agenda anyway. Oh, thanks. So I guess if you want, we could start with general fund revenues. If you have any questions, the sheet for the general fund revenues is, we have the detail. If you go to the front, the detail of the general fund revenues starts on page 2, and then it goes to page 7. We did on the revenues, the millage was calculated at the 5.88. And that's our existing millage rate. So it gives us approximately $2,992,470. The franchise fees went up slightly to $413,000. I'm just gonna pull out the big ones. Intergovernmental went down from what was proposed. So intergovernmental in 2019, 2020. And some of that was, again, because of the items that were moved and the restricted funds that were moved from the general fund to the special revenue. That was the cause for a lot of that decrease. Development fees went up. A lot of that was due to the retainer amount that was put in there. That's really kind of a pass-through. So that's reflected on the expenditure side. Let's see what else. Might need explaining.
Potentially changing impact fees for new development, things coming in. And if we did that, that would happen, we'd potentially start seeing an increase in revenue at some point during the coming fiscal year. Have you allowed for any of that potential income to come in here with an increase in impact fees?
So on the impact fee side, being conservative, I didn't. The reason why is because a lot of that will be in special revenue and not in general fund. So, and it takes a while for those kind of pots to fill up. You know, the anticipation is, so we've already started working on the study. And we're getting information to the consultant as for parks impact fees, road impact fees, and general services, which includes police, fire, and facilities. So we're already working on that. Florida Rural Water is currently helping us because the contract y'all approved already at a previous meeting. They're working on water and sewer. So what we anticipate is when we get that water impact fee increased, because I think we might, I couldn't imagine any other city being lower, and that will help pay for future well payments. Although we found the money this year, that would offset it future years, and we could get it paid off pretty quickly. I anticipate with the growth that's coming, you know, just if you didn't improve anything else, okay, just what's already on the books, I think the well could get paid off with increased water impact fee revenues in hopefully 3 years. But that mainly is going to be the special revenue funds, because that's kind of restricted to what the impact fees will allow it for to pay for. It doesn't necessarily help us on the general fund side.
Thank you.
I'll see if I can pull out any other ones. Our transfer in was a little less. We transferred less in this year from the transportation fund because the fund balance is kind of getting lower, so we don't want to keep relying on transferring too much money in. So that transfer in was lower. And the transfer we're going to make this year is lower than the previous year too, in 2019, 2020. And I think you can see the difference is around 250 to 300,000 if you look on that. Let me see what else. I don't know if you do have any more questions on the revenue or just want to kind of look over there a little.
It's the thing that we have to be cognizant of is when you're looking at the revenue funds, is restricted funds and so forth, is that some of the restricted funds and so forth were being counted in the general fund, and now we've taken them out. We've made them in a separate type of funding, so the money is still there.
Right.
However, when you get down to wanting to make sure that you have enough surplus, I know the state type of deal. From an auditor standpoint, if we keep the restricted money in there, we're meeting the threshold. However, that money truly isn't there. So we have to, over the next several years and so forth, we have to build that general fund in its essence back to the 1.3 million with the additional money as additional money.
Correct. Like, for instance, the reserve fund was something y'all had the ordinance on. So that was previously a line item in the general fund, the $75,000 that you were having us put aside for that. But it was all reflected in the fund balance for the general fund. So technically, if someone were to come to audit us, they would still put that, say that's part of the fund balance. But for the purposes of how y'all wanted it kind of a reserve emergency fund, so we made it that. But it's in good practice to start continuing to build the general fund balance. Right, it's there.
It's there. We can be used. It isn't like
Right.
it can't be used, but it's there for what it is. So this is just another, we're building the other, let's get it up there, and this is truly then for emergencies.
Right, it's kind of
Okay.
just, it's more clear, it's more transparent.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So when y'all say, hey, what's the fund balance of this, or and it also helps us when we put it into our Springbrook, our finance software, and y'all want to see where we're at, then we can run a report for you, and we're not kind of wondering. It's all will help us generate the information that staff gets requested from y'all.
Response from GRU about the utilities they're providing and what their actual customer base is? Because I noticed in the coming year, there's zero budgeted for franchise fees from GRU. And that was something that our attorneys were talking with GRU about at one point.
Okay, so I was not aware of that, but since I am now, I can check on it.
You got a look option, diesel and gas tax, you got a
Which page?
page 3.
Page 3.
Which thing, buddy?
That was one that was moved in the transportation fund,
Okay.
special revenue. So if you turn to page, and that is a restricted fund. So although it was in the general fund before, it never was being allowed to be used for fund balance. So this way it's separate so that you can, it's better that way. So anyway, so if you move over there, you will see that we have proposed $210,000, page 53. In the end of the year actuals, that all came from the auditors. We went back and forth as we created these special revenue funds with the auditors to make sure that we were starting with the correct beginning in fund balance.
From an accounting standpoint, just like you did with the restricted funds, and when we're being asked transportation and why aren't we taking care of roads and so forth, counting wise, we haven't had that money separated out where it was in transportation, it could build, it was being used within general fund money and not separate, and now we're separating it out like it should be.
Right, so that has been used, which is allowed by the
Right,
state.
right.
It's been used mostly for transfers to help fund police.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
Anticipate receiving. How was that factored at all into this budget, or what is the thought on how those dollars are going to impact any of these things?
When you talk about the federal funds, are you talking about like what projects exactly? Because it depends on what.
The money that's coming with the current,
Oh, COVID, I did not, that's me being very conservative. So if we get those funds, then when we get those, which we should get those, then we'll be coming to y'all, with recommendations on how to spend that, and y'all will make that decision. I did not put it in this budget because I don't want to put it in there until we receive it. I don't want to be anticipating funds that I don't have in the bank yet.
well, but we know what we've been told we're getting, and the first
Yeah, it's
payment's
like-
supposed to be in this fiscal year.
Yeah, it's like 2.6 million. Well, if you want us to bring it back to you, I can, and I can put in a special revenue fund. Would you like me to do that?
Well, I'm just curious, how would we, I mean, would those funds, can they be used to handle any of these items that are in our current budget? And would that shift some things around? You know, and I mean, when do we have that conversation? Because we know we're getting that money. And there are a lot of other, parts of the
Right.
different budgets that are getting funded too. So how do we use that money synergistically to maybe get an even larger grant? But when do we talk about that in terms of our funding?
I mean, we can go ahead and start talking about it the next meeting if you like. I was trying to just get through this budget first. My recommendation for those funds would be that they're on capital projects, and we don't try to use them to offset anything that's reoccurring expenses, so we don't get dependent on things that we're not going to receive in future years. So my recommendation, if you wanted to put in this budget, I could put it in a special revenue fund, and we can start discussing what that's going to be used for. The one thing is I would like more than just 2 weeks for staff to think about what projects should be on there. I want some time to really think about it and work with the departments to make the best recommendations. And I've been so heavy into this right now. I'm just gonna be honest, there hasn't been the time yet. So I just want it to give it the time that it needs to be given. So we spend it in the best manner. We can bring those conversations anytime you want. We can start talking about it every single meeting if you like. And we have our list of things. Our list of things that staff wants is long. I would recommend first tying it to strategic planning items and seeing what, if any, of the those funds could cover those costs. And then after that, start looking at other things that are important to the community that the commission knows about and staff knows about.
When are those funds anticipated to be received? Is there a time frame?
That's kind of the thing, it's a moving target, we've been told this month. There's new speculation going around, it could be September again. Then there was speculation that we could see half this month and then half again in November. So it's a moving target at this point, but last I was told we would see half this month at some point.
But would it be something that if you're gonna do on the funding on that, you just wait, like you said, you get it in, you have the conversation, do we set it aside? We say that money's basically for special projects, so we know it's not gonna impact operational type of thing, so when the money comes in, then what you're saying is then you have the conversation, you go back to the strategic deal, and you start saying, let's allocate this money now that's in. I would agree with the deal. I don't like spending money until I have it. So I would agree with that. Let's get it in, because you never know with the federal government, you don't know.
Might change.
Well, it would be a restricted fund because it's earmarked that you can use it certain ways, you can't use it other ways. So it would be restricted. So we can put 2.6 million in there and then put 2.6 million for capital and throw some, items in there we think that it could be potentially. And to start those conversations, we can, but because the one thing is most all the items that we will do are going to be ones that y'all have to approve a second time anyway, because they're going to be higher budgeted items, many of them.
On this one I am, on this one here. So let's say you put $2.6 million in, you put $2.6 out. At some point in time, you're gonna have to do a budget amendment either way, depending on what has actually come in. So does it serve any purpose to put a expected dollar amount in there now, and or wait until we actually get it and then do the budget amendment to add it? And I'm just talking from a procedural standpoint. What is the cleaner way to do it?
I honestly, I think it's fine either way because staff's not gonna spend the money if we don't have it anyway, like I'm not spending any money that doesn't come in, so. I mean, it's, like wild spaces, we anticipate it, right? So we went ahead and put it in. So like Ross said, yeah, it's coming. We think it is gonna be, it's probably going to be the 2.6 million. So he's right. It makes sense to put it in there. Staff didn't put it in there so we could just have more discussion, more time for discussion, but we can, you can make a budget amendment at any point in time. So you can do it either way. There's not a right or wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, we can go on and understand it. I was just looking, are there things in here that would fit into the categories we know the federal government has said we're supposed to spend money on, which would free up money for other places in the budget? Because as I look at your numbers, you've been very conservative with revenue, and you've been, in some cases, on the high side as far as what expenses might be.
Yeah, that's what I do.
And it shows. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have a little more transparency in how the money is moving around. But if there's an opportunity to free up money, like if we decide, I know at different times they've talked about internet,
right,
in public spaces, that definitely qualifies for these funds, the federal funds. So then if that were the case and we've budgeted in our IT or something, that kind of money, I would be in favor of pretty much counting on it coming from those special funds and freeing that money up here. Because one of my things that I want to see all of, and I understand this is the first meeting and that's why I didn't send you a big email with all my questions.
Oh, you can.
But
I'm used to it.
It's like, it was, I couldn't tell if we're changing staffing levels at any departments. And I know that I'm very familiar with Parks and Recreation. I know that they have trouble keeping up with, some safety issues on the playgrounds and mowing, and especially with the rain and what have you. And our parks are being used more than ever.
Right.
So have we substantially added a body there? And Public Works, or what's going on in the building department? I know we might need someone, you've said, if these developers come in, but with just the inspections that we're doing now, we're keeping staff really, really busy. Do they have all the resources? And if there's a way to shift money around to help give them their tools, then I'm for that.
I'm 110% in favor. Like the IT budget, some of the stuff in the IT budget could be offset with COVID funds.
Nothing in this budget right now is a large capital expenditure that would be a benefit with the COVID money. Most of this is reoccurring and stuff that we do every year. So some of the bigger projects that have been identified that myself and Chief Shepherd have talked about that could possibly benefit the PD aren't included in this budget. We have tasked staff to look at some things in certain departments that we know would be eligible under the COVID funding. There's some stuff in Public Works, there's some stuff in Fire, some of those departments, and I think there's doing some stuff with some broadband ideas with Parks and Recs that Damon's working on, but they're not addressed in this budget. That we haven't really gone into capital to get into a whole lot. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, this is pretty much what we need just to get by day to day.
So what Ross is saying, and on the deal, just to clarify, so I know comes in, I would anticipate then that when the money comes in, that a workshop would be planned to sit down, this is the money we got, let's go back over the budget, let's think what we can pull, and you would have a separate type of deal, then make the adjustment to the budget at that time, identifying those projects, freeing up this money for over here and this going in. And that would almost have to take a separate.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, and myself and the city manager talked about this, is because there is such a broad scope of projects that need to be done, that we can come back with, when we get the money, we finally know what the end dollar amount is with projects or department, bring it back to the commission, say, hey, these are projects we feel that meet the criteria that can be funded.
Right.
Let the commission vote down and pick which ones they want, kind of rank them, what staff feels is important, we feel is important, and then we'll just run through the list and fund what we can fund off of it.
And what we can do in the budget as well is we can identify if there are some things in here, not a whole lot, because it is pretty bare bones, okay, for operating purposes. But there are some areas that we can identify in here that could potentially be COVID funds, and we could hold off on funding those until the COVID funds come in. So then there would be some more relief. And that would be something you could build fund balance with and use the code. Those would be only, I would only recommend, again, the one-time expenditure things for COVID, not reoccurring costs.
You know, like an example, one of the projects we talked about last year was trying to figure out how we were gonna fund cardiac monitors for the fire department. It was $180,000 expenditure. It's an eligible COVID expenditure. That would something I would have the fire department bring forward to the commission to say, there's COVID money available for this, instead of trying to figure out a grant again or trying to figure out how we're gonna finance it. We would like to use $180,000 of that funds to get new cardiac monitors.
And-
That's an eligible project,
And
but I
what,
didn't put it in this budget even though we need it.
and what usually happens too, when we're thinking of using these funds, we have to call the county or whoever's like in charge of it to make sure, hey, this is what we do. Is it okay? So we have to kind of, and they don't really have it all worked out right now until all the cities start using it and those questions start coming up. So
This through Florida League of Cities, but the federal government has been really specific.
right.
The state cannot add any restrictions, and because we're a non-traditional governmental unit or whatever the size, our funding comes through the state instead of directly from the federal government. But they've set the criteria, and the county on these funds will have no say. So.
So do y'all want to move on to other departments, or do you have any more questions on revenues at this point? Okay, so we had the city commission budget. There was a little more put in for training and travel. Not as much as I'd like, because love to get involved more with Florida League of Cities and some other organizations. The previous budget was 5,000. 1,000 was adopted last year. We took it to 3,000, which was in between that. Had the insurance cost increased by 4,000. Inflation is definitely impacting us. You can see that in several areas on the budget. Fuel is another one. When you're ready, we can move to the city manager budget. Training and travel was increased to account for, we have additional employees in the city manager's budget as well. Likewise, there are several of us working on our certifications. And there's ICMA and Florida League of Cities, and there's organizations out there that are beneficial for us to belong to, so we can keep up with what's going on for the city. So and it's reflective of what several other department heads are getting as well. So it's not this big increase over what other department heads are getting. That includes me, Bruce, Kevin, some of it. Is that, I think, Angela, was that the main employees and the city manager, me, Bruce, Kevin? Yeah. Oh, and Draylan. Yeah, and Draylan. So Draylan's working on her certification as well for to be a certified city secretary. So quite honestly, it doesn't really even cover um it doesn't even cover probably what we need. It was actually pretty conservative.
Well, coming out of fire, or is it part of it coming out of this? Okay.
Y'all want to move to city clerk now? Or do you have any questions on city manager?
I'm ready to move on to city clerk.
Yeah.
Okay, on the city clerk's budget, it mostly stayed the same.
I don't, know. Excuse me, Angela, I'm not sure if they are, it seems like the two would be. You're okay with it? Okay. Nobody said anything, so. I'm glad.
You spoke, and I was just going with it.
Okay,
I didn't know she was here for her city clerk.
sorry, Angela.
And so on the, city manager pointed out earlier, on the contractual services for Unico, that went up for the legal review, of the ordinance and such as on there. And then, we did reduce some in our copier fee, we ended up getting new copiers, and it is costing us less per month. We also reduced our legal ads in our department because, to keep better track of what it's costing, planning has moved their legal ads under planning. And then on the city election expense, we prepared the budget, we were planning on having an election. So that is in there as an increase because at the time we were planning on having a, city election. The rest of it remains the same.
So that money could be reallocated,
That is correct.
like now.
Sure. That's correct. Oh, and I guess you want to do human resources?
Yeah.
I think that budget's good.
Resources is
Okay. Okay, we did, in human resources, we did reduce the ads, just because this year we didn't do as many. It didn't cost us as much as we thought. That's pretty much it. Hold on.
On what it costs human resources to onboard or exit an employee. So like, what's it cost us to turn over an employee? I'm just
It depends on
curious.
the department. So PD is a little higher to bring them on board. Their physicals, they have, the background screens, they have to do psychological, those kinds of things. It's a lot more expensive than just a general employee. So general employee, we do a physical, we don't do a drug screen, so it's less costly for us to bring on a regular city employee.
Excuse me, you don't have to do a drug screen?
No.
I didn't know that.
What, we used to do it for every employee, but we, advised by our attorneys that we only do it for, employees that operate in machinery or drive city vehicles.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
It really hasn't changed, and they've been pretty good with their bills. I mean, they pretty much consistently come in with their retainer. I think that the increases we could see this year are their work they do on development projects, but that's why the retainer exists. That's supposed to be paid for out of that retainer amount that they put in, that then, they give it up front, and when say it goes down to less money, they need to replenish it. And so a lot of the extra work they're going to do has to do with that. So hopefully we should be staying within our within our amount for them. And on finance, if we're moving on to that right now, that's on page 21. Again, that position that was brought up earlier, there are some changes that need to be made in utility billing, from a customer service standpoint and from a process improvement standpoint. And I need there to be more oversight from the finance area with utility billing as we try to make those improvements. And that's why I kind of reflected that with the salary and what positions we'll be doing.
Retirement go up so much. I mean, if we have I realize we're going to bring on another finance director, but we did have one. It just went up significantly.
Yeah, it's the addition of the half person. The finance director, we didn't the salary. We weren't planning on this big increase over, what Jennifer was paid or anything. We were keeping the salary in line with how it was previously for the finance director.
There's additional people in the finance? Is that what she asked?
Well, it's not that there's additional people, it's that the money just kind of is reallocated differently because I want there to be more oversight from the finance area over UB. I want there to be more, I see the secondary employees being not only just pure finance, but helping with utility billing more to help get that revamped and restructured and more customer service friendly process improvement, help get hopefully the goal is to get some of our tag money back. I want to focus on that area next year, and I want.
But I think maybe like what Linda was asking on the deal, when it goes up 10 grand or so forth, there's another person there, so you have somebody else within the retirement system at a higher rate of pay, which is going to increase what you have to put into retirement.
So what did we do on that?
We took, the position was half in utility billing, I was fully in utility billing, we split it between utility billing and finance, so it's gonna show higher in finance because that half position wasn't there last year.
Right, that's what I'm,
Okay.
And it went down, should be down.
you know what I mean? Okay.
Are we anticipating sending out bills and stuff electronically? Because I noticed the money for postage and copier and miscellaneous is decreasing. And so I'm just curious if that's realistic or.
Yeah, I think it's realistic with the AMI stuff we've been discussing, finishing up the RFQ now for that. Hopefully I'll be sending that out for services in the next couple of weeks, getting it back. That'll help with online bill pay or online, being able to look at your account online and be able to assist with online bill pay. And hopefully that can start pushing us up into a paperless billing style system. That's their goal.
we have communication services on there. It has nothing there. What is that?
That was the IT. We had the wireless and communication services moved from IT into all the departments. So that included
Okay,
basically anything that wasn't a cell phone that departments use.
okay.
Has there been any thought about potentially staffing at least the lobby on Fridays? Instead of being closed, especially if we're trying to increase our tag revenue?
I think that would be something we looked at when we tried to like revamp some things down there. We got the new finance director. I think that would be wonderful, so we can get some revenues back, and I would love to do that. But I want to look at it with the new person and see what's feasible, and that's kind of, there's a lot that needs to be done down there. That's one of them. That'll be something we try to strive for.
Yeah.
But I don't want to like guarantee exactly when it's going to happen, because it's hopefully next year. That was the goal.
But also I'll point out that with the AMI stuff, and if we go that direction, that could possibly eliminate anything through utility billing on a Friday, because it'll all be computer-based, or it'll be readily accessible right then and there. But you're also looking at additional costs when you add staff on Fridays, because you're here to supervise. There's a lot of moving parts that need to happen with that.
Yeah, is that something new? I mean, I don't remember us discussing that in the past. Having someone here on Friday.
I'm only saying because at one time, the revenue from the tag agency fees paid for all of the counter staff. And here in this budget is paying for about 50% of it.
But there was also some changes downstairs that city manager's office wasn't aware of. There's not, the amount of dealers that were going downstairs are not coming down there anymore. There's some things that need to, the city manager said it needs to be revamped and retouched, and customer service needs to be revisited, and we need to reach out to these people again and see if we can get everything back up.
I think he nailed it. We would have to really go kind of sit down, talk to him, survey him, see who would use us again, and we'd have to show them that we're providing a level of service that they would want to use.
Because that opens up a whole lot more expenses if you're gonna have people downstairs on a Friday. I mean, it's utilities, all of that, is included, so I just not heard anything about that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it from a service to the community perspective, but also like mostly a revenue. Because historically, if we could bring in more revenue than it cost us to be open, it would be worth it. So, and what I just heard here is that it's more than just the hours, so I understand.
Yeah, I would welcome a sidebar conversation.
Yeah, I get that, so.
That just, we have to talk about that.
Okay. License and billing.
So, are y'all ready to move to IT? Are y'all?
What's license and building? Nothing there?
Looks pretty,
Yeah, it looks pretty clean.
IT,
30.
Shit.
I'm sorry.
Gee.
What is SIP? It says by moving phones to SIP next budget year. That's a new company or something? Or is it a soft application, an app?
So the way our current phone system is set up, it runs us about $795 a month to run it. By moving basically to a cloud-based style voice over IP system, it's going to reduce that cost.
Okay.
I want to say it's going to reduce it down almost. The new phone system will pay for itself in 4 months. So, but that's the cost of the handsets and everything else. I think it was 4 months it'll pay for itself. So it'll reduce it almost $600, I believe, something. Kevin, you remember off the top of your head?
Well, it's reduced significantly, I see that, I just didn't know what SIP was.
SIP stands for Session Initiation Protocol.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
That's the definition. But as the assistant city manager said, basically it enables us to, in a roundabout way, host our own internal phone system without being beholden to a certain carrier. So right now we're utilizing Windstream, but we can go to a pure cloud-based IP solution that will enable us to ever expand our capabilities and do it at a lower cost.
Right now, we're bound by licenses, and we only have so many, and they don't sell them anymore. But the other thing too is if we go into like another pandemic shutdown, let's just use that as an example, or we have this disaster in City Hall is going to be down for a while, which along those lines, you can literally take your handset from work, you can have everybody go home and work, they plug it in, it works just like they're here.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, those are some of the capabilities of the new system. It's also available, like, if I have a family emergency and I can't come in, but I need to work from home for a couple days, I can log in, I can transfer all my calls to my cell phone, you'll never even know how to do all this. So it's gonna improve customer service in the grand scheme
That's great.
as well.
The system
It's
that we
more
have is
efficient
data
and less
installed.
costly.
So this will allow us to modernize significantly and alleviate some of the problems that we have where calls are made into various city departments and then they just kind of disappear.
We're going from Scott's flip phone to a new iPhone.
Well, I can't argue that.
Will you have to increase the internet bandwidth available into
So we
City Hall?
already have it.
Okay.
You said it costs about $7.95 to run the city phones,
I
base
believe
pay?
it's about $7.95 a month, yes, ma'am. I'm going off the top of my head.
That's
I can double
cheap.
check
No,
it.
that's cheap because there's another issue that I'd like to
It can
address.
actually go cheaper than that when we get it done.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's a terrible price. I was
That's
just,
for phone system. That's not what we pay for internet, that's not for the bandwidth and all that stuff, that's just literally what we pay just to maintain the current.
Oh, okay,
phone system
okay.
we have.
okay.
Okay, what's next?
It's nice having the explanations here where there's big variances. I really appreciated that.
Are we
I'm
good?
trying to figure out ways to defund my job, I can see the wheels turning.
Well,
We have
those
to find
one,
money
that was for
somewhere.
me for when you asked questions, so I didn't forget, Vice Mayor Jones.
I'm sorry, what?
The explanation was for me, so I don't forget when you ask questions.
Well, it's beneficial to us as well.
Twofold. I
Yeah.
see where the confusion was. City attorney is F and I, so we may not have skipped him after all.
Do y'all want to move to planning?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's on page 32. We put money in here for after the comp plan is completed, which should be coming to y'all in the next month or two. That we put money, right after that, you have to do the LDC rewrite, it's required by the state. So we put money in there, staff was planning to, there wasn't enough in there to hire someone to do all this stuff, but just have a little extra oversight. Staff is going to recommend for the professional services, we're just gonna do that in-house with some guidance from the planning council, and we're gonna probably take that down 40,000. Save a little money.
Wherever you
So you're gonna make it 10, you're gonna take the other 40 and shift it.
Yeah. I think most everything else is the same besides moving, the planning tech over. So if I'm gonna have her do all this work, yes, she can't be doing building. When we're doing the LDC rewrite together.
Let me ask you a question on the legal advertisement on 33. I know, and again, I could be wrong on this. I thought we were shifting all the cost to the people to do that, the developers to do it. I know we were doing it. I thought we were shifting it, but I'm seeing it from 10,000 to 8,000.
Actually, so Christy has been doing that. Part of the year, it was still being done where we were paying for it. So that's just something that changed recently. I actually think I
Right.
can reduce that in half. That I probably should have already reduced that in half,
Okay,
actually.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. I just want to make sure because.
Some of the smaller ones, sometimes it's kind of just difficult. They're already fussing and everything.
Okay.
It's easier on the bigger ones.
Okay.
Ready for the building?
Building?
Yeah, that's what I was asking, ready to go to building? Okay.
The building is special revenue, and it is on page
58.
58.
Okay, explain again why the revenues are down.
Well, the revenues, we put the revenues down because we anticipate a lot of the home builds were from Bailey and from Oak Ridge. So once those are built out, then there is still stock, but not as much as there currently was this year. So if y'all allow something else in, it's gonna take a little time for them to get the entitlements, the plating, the infrastructure in before the homes start going up again.
Right.
Do you anticipate this? I know you can't do it. I'm just curious because you have some people moving around in this position and everything else. Just to get a cost, I think it'll probably take 2 or 3 years because this person's moved over here, so the money has followed them. You know what I'm saying? I'm just making a comment. People are moving, which then impacts insurance for that one. So this one's up, this one goes down. I guess you'll see a consistent record of it, maybe 2 or 3 years into the deal, it will even out and you'll see that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, I mean, there are other things such as in the operating fund, they were like these big funds that had a lot of stuff just kind of like dumped into it. So we took some of those and it made them into more funds. So you could see more, like we took operating and would split it out and add like water and sewer is a good area. We would separate out like the chemicals from, we didn't feel like chemicals should be in the same line item as papers and pencils. As we wanted to kind of separate things out so you can really see what things are being spent on. But if you look at the budget, you can see that the total amount is the same. There's just more line items, so you actually know what the money's being spent on instead of like a slush fund kind of thing going on. So that's kind of the same thing that over a number of years, you'll kind of see. And it enables us to make better decisions because when things are all grouped together, it's hard for us to kind of figure out what to budget next year. It's easier when you know, okay, so this much money on chemicals this year, so I'll spend this much on next year. So when it's all together, you're like literally having to pull up like all this stuff to add up how much was on chemicals versus how much was on this. So it just makes for an easier budgeting process and more transparency.
In short, we met with the department heads and said, what makes your job the most difficult? And it's like a lot of this was coming out of operating, chemicals being an example for public works. You'll see that next meeting. And it's really hard for them to budget it because they have to go through each PO. It's just, instead of having an actual account for it, they didn't have like office supplies. It was just coming out of operating supplies. And it's like you have a $30,000 operating supply slush fund with really no accountability. So we really looked at transparency and accountability.
And we wanted things to kind of be alike between departments. So there were some line items that, one thing would have been taken out of this line item, say it was operating supplies in another budget, and then another budget is taken out of a totally different line item. So we want there to be kind of consistency on what's being taken out of the line items across departments.
Somebody's overspending, then you actually see it as opposed to other departments. You can basically compare and see what they're actually spending.
Yeah, and I know we're not in the public works, but we ran into that with like sewer, trying to figure out what we were actually spending on grinder pump repairs. What is the actual cost for a grinder pump? I don't know.
Well, why? Because one, we weren't really repairing them, we were replacing parts. So what we were calling rebuilding was a part replacement, but it was coming out of, some parts were coming out of operating because they felt like it was an operating, some parts were coming from here, and it's not that they were doing anything wrong, it was just the way the budget was set up. So now we know it cost us $75,000 a year to keep grinder pumps in the ground. We know that. And this year's a little bit higher because we had to get caught up on parts and stuff, but it's going to run us about $75,000 a year to keep grinder pumps together. So now we actually have that number to work with. Personnel in that department, it takes 2 people to keep up with them. We were doing 14 grinder pumps a week. We're down to 3 under an actual rebuild program right now. We average 3. So we've cut back on overtime, cut back on work hours, and it's actually showing a true representation of what it costs to keep them built. So that's what this is going to streamline over the next couple of years, and should be really clean.
Vehicle repair and maintenance, $500, but nothing for fuel oil, operating supplies, or subscriptions and memberships. Where did those go to?
That was something that when we copied it over, we just discovered that too. When we copied it over, it didn't all hit. So that was something we had to add a little, but they're going to be the same as last year, basically.
Okay.
And it's all one fund, so it doesn't affect the general fund. That was something on our checks when we were doing our double check.
All right.
We'll highlight all of those for you. We'll put them in yellow cells for the next meeting so you see them, so you're not getting a different budget that you're not aware of. Because the departments submitted their budgets, and so then we pulled them over and combined them and tweaked them.
Really wanted and were willing to give up because there just wasn't going to be the money for it?
Departments, I think we try to get them most of everything they need. I mean, there's this long list of things that we want. I mean, police probably. Yeah, police had the most, but Antoine the vehicles are the big one that stands out in my mind that we're going to need a discussion on the second meeting. That was the really big one.
I mean, all in all, the departments were really, frugal in what they were requesting and very realistic in what they were requesting. A lot of them were trying to bring the budget back to where it was in 1920 instead of some of the reductions that we had this year, just trying to get a more accurate representation of what their expenditures are. But in all honesty, most of us throughout the city really haven't had a whole lot of capital expenditures over the last couple of years. And we're starting to see it now. You know, we didn't fund the cop cars. What was that? We were supposed to get 2 a year. It didn't happen. We're now 6 cars behind, and we're now playing catch up. You know, fortunately, we had a fire system, fire department, so we were able to bring that up so we could get these trucks that we need to get going. And it puts us in a situation where we have to buy 2 at once, which is not going to be cheap. The building department, yes, it's a special revenue fund, but they're only allowed to carry a 4-year average balance for all forward. So, that they're going to need to look at some vehicle replacements, some possibly additional staff. They will need additional staff when we add subdivisions if that moves forward. Public Works, there's 2 people still in the streets. 2. I mean, we got 2 people handling potholes, roads, drainage issues, line locates, and trimming trees. And I have 3 people that mow grass. I have 2 that handle the right of ways and 1 that handles the cemetery.
And
The staffing levels are low there. Water, I mean, when we talked about the grinders at pumps, and some of y'all were on the commission, some of y'all weren't, at this point, we should have 2 people strictly dedicated to rebuilding the amount of grinding pumps we have. Now, we've been able to cut back the way we're doing it, but we never funded those positions. We're still short there. We're still short in water. We should be having a discussion, adding more people to the fire department with the way the population's increased with the calls. I mean, we're already, on the fire department's already 200 calls ahead of where it was last year at this time. And we had a relatively weird year last year with COVID, but the numbers are even up to the year before that where it was pretty normal.
yeah, no, you go ahead, sorry.
Fleet calls for police services right now are going up. They're looking at adding another school resource officer because there's that many more kids in the school. They've hit 1,000. So yeah, are there needs that people have asked for? Absolutely. Is there things that we can afford? Absolutely not.
I think the goal this next year is going to be on cost recovery, because there are a lot of things out there that we're not getting adequate cost recovery or the cost recovery that other cities get for their programs. So it's going to be coming in line with cost recovery, getting our fees in line with other cities, like for example, the impact fees. It's going to be also the budgeting process starting it earlier and having discussions even maybe before the budget process starts, maybe even right after this budget ends, on a multi-year budget, so that we can anticipate when revenues are going to come, what personnel, vehicles, equipment, capital projects we can do like the next 5 years out if things come in. Because the truth is, right now, with how things are, this year's focus was just getting the budget back where operationally it reflected what's really being expended and that we could afford what's currently how we're operating.
We'll point out one thing on the water side as you guys start looking at your budgets this week and as you go through them more. The 2020K resolution that says we will up the water rates and sewer rates based off the CPI for July. They have not released July CPI yet. It'll be released tomorrow. So once that's released tomorrow, we'll start calculating the rates and I'll get that out to you just to show what the new revenue and rates will be. But this is based off of the current year rates right now because Miss Frugal over here wouldn't let me guesstimate. Correct. We have checks and balances. Yes, sir. We're good. I just wanted to make that known though. So you'll see an email come out at the end of this week, beginning of next week with what those rates should be, and then we'll make some.
We put in from the CPI to do the water and sewer, so it would be
That's the resolution, yes.
So it'd be an incremental type of thing and not all of a sudden you gotta
Correct.
smoke the type of deal. It's basically as it goes, we're staying with it as opposed to an arbitrary decision by the board to say, look, we're gonna increase it $4.
Correct.
We've got something in place to do it.
Yeah, it's resolution 2020K. It's and basically it states that we will use the July CPI for the year that we're in the budget. So, and the CPI index will not be released until tomorrow. So it should be released at 8:30, and I'll start putting numbers together, and then we'll have a better idea next week. There should be additional funding. June was 0.09. Historically, July looks like it's been anywhere between 0.04 and 0.07. So I've been playing with some numbers around 0.05, just guesstimating that's where it's going to be, but I'll know tomorrow.
Okay, so do y'all have any other questions on building? So the next one is parks. That's on page 51. This was one of the big ones where the focus was on kind of pre-COVID numbers. And then when I talk about cost recovery, that's something that we'll look at for Parks and Rec. And when I talk about cost recovery, that doesn't mean that everyone pays the full cost of what it costs to run programs. Because parks is an example, like the elderly population normally is a zero cost recovery or very minimal compared to there's different age groups where the different cost recoveries are different percentages in the Parks and Rec field. So, and then but then you still want to leave money for, the people that don't have money to pay for the programs. You want to make the program still open. So some of the scholarships and all the stuff that Damon works very hard on, we still want to make sure that we maintain that. So, so when I do say cost recovery, I want you to know that cost recovery is different on program and service and department area. So, kind of look at Parks and Rec. So as you can see, this was kind of a hit on our budget. So last year, 12,000 was adopted for the utilities, even though the prior year it came in at 16,000. And this year, the end of the year estimate is 19,000. So we budgeted 20,000. So that was an $8,000 hit to the budget. It was just like little things like that throughout the budget. So when we say we're trying to, this year's on getting the expenditures in line with what they actually are and paying for things, so we're not hitting fund balance in future years. Then Damon already discussed the repairs and maintenance. Fuel repair and maintenance went up for anyone that has a fleet across all departments slightly. Yeah, the fuel went up because of the cost of fuel, and repairs and maintenance because of the age of vehicles.
I mean, you have the ability to basically check to see what is being drawn off on the particular fields, so where you can see if there's something.
Yes, and for example, Musco Lighting, from when COVID numbers started decreasing, we're opening things up for the most part, because parks were shut down for a small period of time. According to the Musco, we've used sports complex more than pretty much ever before. Musco, the sports complex, we added the disc golf. They were doing disc golf at night as well. We utilized the lights more this past year, than to my understanding, than ever before.
Athletic fields?
For all the athletic fields, and also it went up as well with the old school too. Yes.
Flip that out to where you could say
Yes.
that this athletic field is costing us this, you could look at it in that, segregated out.
For the most part, absolutely, yes.
And and then Damon, do you want to talk about your special revenue fund and the projects in there in more detail? Yeah,
Yes.
the one from the special revenue fund.
Wild
Yeah.
spaces. We're pretty ambitious with the rec department. With the wild spaces money coming in, consolidating, of course, a lot will dictate as well with Canoe Outpost coming up this week as well, whether if that gets passed. The rail trail master plan with Ashley has spoken about, that is something that would help out with development. But also with the rail trail, we're going to put roughly about $100,000 to the side. We're hoping for good faith to let the community know, which through strategic initiative is something that we definitely want to move forward with. So perhaps utilizing that money just for, finding a broker with TPC, with communication, things of that nature to try to, move forward with that. The Memorial Park, we have 550,000 allocated towards the ball field. However, 200,000, once it's complete, 200,000 will go back to us for the land water conservation. And we're moving forward with that, of course, within the next month. Again, the canoe outpost, park improvements, we figured we'll put $50,000 roughly somewhere around there for park improvements, which would, from working, redoing the fencing at some of the ball fields, just something that with us and staff are talking about. I think instead of just with wild spaces, which we've done in the past, it's like, all right, let's just use wild spaces. We could just use wild spaces more. We're kind of consolidating that. 50,000 is earmarked for where we can take care of some park operation maintenance. Again, the lights at the Civic Center, we're entertaining that as well. Storage building, a mower. These are some of the things that we're going to be utilizing the wild spaces money for this coming budget year. We have it. It's a matter of just utilizing it. So move forward with that. We just real quick, we also put in for estimated costs for the following budget year and the year afterwards for 2024 with the wild spaces money once it ends in 2024. Staff, would you like to? I'm sorry, how many? Oh, people. Currently right now it's myself, Danny, Omar, CJ, and we just acquired someone else, Brian Langston. Correct. And also we are utilizing some of the grant funding as well with the Summer Youth Employment Program, which has been significantly helpful for us over the past summer. So. Yeah. We are ambitious.
And the farmers market, again, the substantial increase was because it's being offset by for expenditures is being offset by the substantial increase in revenues. It's just a pass through the tokens and the, let me go to that, I had it written down. I think there's some SNAP money and things like that. That's all passed through. And it's a success. So I don't understand why it was budgeted so little, but it's just reflecting what's going on. So.
Yeah, I just said she got some money she need to give back. The $2,750. In the years past, just thinking, we used to have a youth council. I think we used to budget, I think it was $500 for the youth council. Yeah, is that something possible that we can look at?
Oh yeah, so putting the youth council back in there. We'll put it either, what department was it under?
It will, but
Okay.
put up under recreation or something, just to trying to get some to fill the young people, since I'm the youngest person sitting up here.
Right.
I've worked for cities that have had like leadership,
Yeah,
stuff like that, like the leaders, they go through and there's like a group of people who are prepared to be on boards and commissions and things later. And we can definitely put some money in for like whatever you want like that. So we'll do that.
So
Kind of,
Commissioner Williams, would you like to see the mayor's youth council come back and do it that way, the way we did it before, where it shadows the commission and things like that? Or you want to try to revision it and come up with some sort of like government leadership youth program?
yeah, let's just, because last time they really weren't doing that much, just do something they can really get involved, because it makes a difference. I think about, I think his first name, Waters, that. Zach.
Yeah.
Zach was a part of that.
Yeah.
youth council back in the day.
Okay.
Trying to encourage young people to get more involved in government. Like I said, I'm about the youngest thing sitting up here. But,
I'm gonna let him get away with it. I got the gray hair.
I keep winking my eyes on. But just so to get young people involved.
Oh, I love that.
And be quite honest, I never forget. Them kids impressed me so. One night we was having a problem with used to have the what do you call it, the skateboard at the out here. And so we, as a commission, we kept talking, and we gave it to those young people. Young people came up with a solution to do with that. After they looked at it and they talked about it, they said, close it down. The young people made that decision because they were vandalized in there.
No, I appreciate it. If we get them, they can also get involved with all these art projects that
Yes.
are coming up. They can get their input. I mean, there's projects that they can get input
Mhm.
into. So people support what they help create. It's kind of something I always said. So it brings the community together. So.
Yeah. And I'm not, when I say this is not a negative, this is not negative, it's just the truth. Young people are different.
Mhm.
They just,
Yeah, they have these.
they see things different from us now. They're different. Man, I can't speak on, although I'm the youngest thing sitting up here.
No, that's
I
good.
can't speak their
They're
language.
different and that's good.
I'm surprised that the two of you have sat down the whole time he's saying he's the youngest, that you all haven't said anything.
I was,
You were getting ready?
those out there saw me,
Okay.
yeah. I just wasn't vocal about it. I just,
Now, for those that
That's
know,
it.
I'm not the youngest thing
That's it.
sitting up here. Ross is the youngest sitting up here about a few months.
but he does need to be careful because there are some of us who are older and we may take offense to that with his
I'm
comment.
old too.
He's not as old as I am.
I'm older. And I'm proud to be 60.
done.
I'm proud to be 63.
Better than the alternative.
Yeah, that's true.
Very
I'm
much.
proud of my youth too. Yes, indeed.
We're done.
You tell me, do y'all have any more questions, comments, concerns?
Well, does it matter? No.
Oh,
I think we.
I was gonna say that. I was gonna say it, but I didn't know if I should. Bruce always says it.
yeah. I move that we.
Nobody else got any comments, right? Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh.
Were we gonna do citizen comments? I'm so sorry.
Oh, I forgot about that already.
All right, we have audience comments? Okay. We sorry.
It's okay. I wanted to hear all that, because I actually learned a couple of things.
I'm going to use verbiage that you all used. Yeah, we're different. And we have to be accountable. And I figured out there's $15,000 in the general fund, and guess what? I want Boxcar Court paved, please. So I live in Heron Landing. And I think all of you got my emails a few weeks ago about the process of Heron Landing. In 2003, the city would allow Heron Landing to do the subdivision where it's at if we paved Boxcar Court. So we did. We found out after we hired the contractor who did the paving, he used something called Cool Cure, and it broke down. We came back to the contractor and he agreed to repave both our private road in Heron Landing, 183rd Lane, and Boxcar Court at no charge because the product wasn't to where it needed to be to withstand the kind of traffic of garbage trucks, concrete trucks, any kind of heavy machinery trucks. The city commission, and it's not you guys, because you guys are different. You would never have done this. They said no. They didn't want it done for free. They didn't want it improved. Well, Heron Landing, 183rd Lane is perfect. and it gets the same garbage trucks that go down Boxcar Court, and it gets the concrete trucks and the tree trimming trucks and the general traffic that we as the residents there use. Boxcar Court is the only way we can get out of our neighborhood. We don't have a choice. It's the only way an ambulance can come into our neighborhood. It's the only way a fire truck can come into our neighborhood, or police officers, which I saw a whole bunch of them the other day. And it was for all a good reason. But anyway, my appeal to you all is to please consider finding $15,000 from general fund and maybe something over here and something over there, and let's get it done. We pay our taxes. We are fine to pay our taxes. Our taxes with our homestead was $4,700. That, we paid $10,000 for a grinder pump. I'm thrilled. I don't want to have a septic tank, so it's okay. Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm different, but I was okay with that. So anyway, my point is, not only did my husband and I move here from Alachua, the city of Alachua, and he was on the planning commission on the city of Alachua. We moved here. We encouraged my son and his wife, their little girl, and her mom to move here from Atlanta. And they did, and they built a house right beside us. So they're paying about $5,000 a year in taxes, plus the $10,000 for their grinder pump that they adore. So anyway, my, I guess, appeal, and I don't know if you all are allowed to talk to me this time. I know you couldn't the last time. I'm just asking you to please consider getting, it's about 320 feet of road. But it really is an important part of our roadway, and I don't know, maybe all of you live on roads with potholes. I don't think you do. I walk your road quite a bit. I think you have 2 little holes, but they're not horrible. I don't know where everybody else lives to walk on your roads, but you know, if you live on roads with potholes, maybe it's okay for you guys. But it's hard on our tires. It's hard on some of our residents who have had some major surgeries recently. It's not a good thing. It's not right. And as a citizen and a happy citizen of High Springs, I really hope you guys will consider looking at getting Boxcar Court done. Also, in 2018, when we built our house, they were very proud to tell us that the City Commission had approved having the road paved. It's 2021 as far as I know, and it's still got a lot of holes. It has got more holes than it does pavement, actually. And if you want to compare Boxcar Court to 183rd Lane, please come drive down, because our road is very nice. And all it took was the contractor being, you know, stepping up and doing the right thing, basically, and using a better product on a paved road. So, all right, that's all. Thank you very much for your time. You guys have a great night. That was a really long meeting. Thank you, guys. Do I need to talk to anybody now? Anybody want to say anything? Okay, Ms. Bates, we'll do that. Next meeting, can I go first? Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now we ready?
Yeah.
Okay.